All right, looks like it's starting.
Okay, so.
You had a horrible timing of that.
All right, so as I said, today what we're going to do is we're going to start with this journal warm-up, which I'll explain in a second. We're going to get into some types of questions and how to ask questions and come up with questions. We're going to play a brief little game with those questions, and then we're going to wrap it up with a reflection. So, you have your journals open. What I need you to do to start is, we've been talking about restorative
Are we
practice.
writing about our secrets and whatnot?
No.
That's what journals are usually for. That's what a journal
You think-
entry is.
Yeah, I guess so. Journal, diary.
No, guys don't call it diaries. They call it journals. Diaries are for girls.
Journals have so many purposes. They're super multifaceted. I write.
Okay, that sounded a little sexist that I said that, but
It's okay. I didn't think so. I understand what you're saying. Okay, so we've been talking about restorative practice a little bit off and on.
Yeah.
We've been talking about trying to use different types of trying to solve problems and how restorative justice can help in situations, in settings like this in programs, and how it is beneficial and can be best implemented. So before we move forward, I want you to take about just 5 minutes, and in that space that is provided for you, that box is provided for you, I want you to tell me everything that you feel like you know about restorative practice. So that means the who, what, when, where, why, and how. As many of those things as you can address. What it is, who it involves, when was
there's
it
actually
created.
like a video song for that.
For the who, what, when, where, why, and how?
Yeah, there's
I thought we were gonna write
it's a
about
panda-
what
a
restorative
panda
justice means
sings
to
that.
us.
Yeah, sure. That's totally fine. I just
Yup.
want you to basically write about restorative justice in general so we can lay out your understanding of what it means to you and what you know about it so far. And it'll help us move forward with the second part of the activity.
Okay.
So take about 5 minutes to work on that. You can write in bullet points or you can write in a paragraph form.
Okay, just give me a minute.
Either one is totally fine. So I'm going to, this is like I'll glance at the clock and then I'll let you know when it's been about 5 minutes. Okay, so we'll pause.
He's not done yet, is he?
And I'm done.
Okay.
I've been done.
You don't have to completely finish. That's totally fine. So let's just take a second, and if you don't mind, would you be willing to share out what you have? Christian, would you mind sharing
yeah.
what you have first, and then
So,
there's no wrong answers.
yeah.
We're just kind of brainstorming.
So restorative justice is when you help someone that has done something wrong, learn from their mistakes instead of punishing them, and helping them apologize to the victim, and help the offender and the victim reunite.
Great. I think that's a really good, holistic kind of summary of the practice in general. Kaden, is there something you would like to add?
Can you give me like a minute? I can't pause.
Sure. So.
Oh. Hey,
Okay.
I think I wrecked my car. You can't see it now, but I'm pretty sure I wrecked it. I put who is the staff, what is like respect, like that's what I feel it as. When is like, hold on, I like when it happened. Boop. Where is the program and why is like the question. Hold on. Of how to fix it, and then like how it happened exactly.
Okay, cool. So you went about it very literally. You went question for question here, like you, which works totally
Okay,
fine.
well, Eric, we both know I'm a very literal person.
Absolutely, I totally appreciate that about you. So, great. Cover the bases of what it looks like when it's implemented, as far as who's involved, what it is, and so on. Okay, let's take a pause from that for a second and turn our attention to me. And I want you to think about, we're going to slightly transition to a different question right now. And have you ever heard someone say, there's no such thing as a bad question?
Yeah, but then you ask a stupid question, I'm like, that's a stupid question.
So,
Like I've heard people say there's no such thing as a stupid question, and I ask a question like, that's a stupid question. It's like, well, excuse me.
okay, so you disagree with that, which is totally fine.
Well, no, I don't disagree with it. I just think it's stupid that people are like, there's no such thing as a stupid or bad question. Then you ask a question, like, that's stupid or that's a bad question.
Well, then that sounds like that person's being a little hypocritical.
Right.
Christian, do you think that there's such a thing as a bad question? Do you agree with that or disagree?
I don't know, like, if it's kind of very plain, like, is the water bottle right there clear? Obviously, it's clear.
So if it's a boring question.
Yeah, if it's not, like, I wouldn't say, like, because some people are sometimes serious about stuff, and, like, I wouldn't try to insult them and say, hey, that's a stupid question, but if they're literally just asking it just to try to annoy you, then it's going to be a stupid question.
Ah, so intent. If they're, like, asking a legitimate question, or if they're just being
Yeah.
Okay,
Because,
absolutely.
And if it's obvious, like, seriously, like, come on, really?
Okay.
But if they actually don't know.
Yeah. So I like that you said that.
Well, like, I could perceive that as not clear. Like, I could perceive that as it's tinted black.
Okay then.
Okay.
Yeah, then you might have some problems.
Okay, so next point.
No, I'm just saying you never know how the person's perceiving it.
Yeah, I guess.
That is very true as well. And a good kind of, that's a bit of
That's an argument.
solid perception on your part of how, and kind of like emotional intelligence to be able to see that sometimes people might not, when they ask a question, it might not be as obvious to them as it is to you. But that being said, I think we can agree that there are, based on what you said, there are maybe no bad questions, but there are definitely better questions, right? We can ask better questions. There are okay questions and there are good questions. So, in what we're doing now, what we're moving towards, where you did that survey the other day and we talked about different things that may be problematic to you that you noticed. We've talked about restorative justice. So, we're starting to design and develop a problem that we're going to hope and try to solve. Agreed? We understand this? We're going to address it and try to come up with some sort of plan that we can implement to make a change. So this is called, when we're doing it this way, this process is called design thinking. So right now we're in this step of it. This is called the inquiry stage, which is important because it's just about gathering information. It's inquiring, it's about asking questions.
So you're just like looking around, kind of.
Yeah, it's about immersing yourself and being really familiar with trying to figure out what you know and what you don't know. So a lot of that.
Inquire in a video game. You could do that in a video game. You could inquire yourself in a video game. Like, maybe it could be virtuality, maybe it couldn't be, but you go around, kind of roaming around the video game and you're inquiring about what it's like in the video game.
Yeah, another word for inquire would be to explore, right?
Explore. Oh,
so you're kind of thinking of exploration. So I want you to look here at, if you could look at the front sheet only. We're not going to talk about the second sheet here.
Okay.
That's not here. These are 4 stages of questions in like problem solving, right? Each stage is important. The first one you kind of already did today in your journal entries. The second one we're going to do shortly. And those are the 2 main questions that are involved in types of questions involved in the inquiry stage. So if you look here, you see the 4 types of questions that we have. We have what questions, why questions, what if questions, and how questions. So we have to learn to be able to develop really good versions or questions for each type, each stage. So the what questions are like this. What questions are basically just questions that help us get a sense of a topic. So in our case, the topic is restorative justice, right? So it's about, what is it? What does it look like? Very basic things that you could ask a question, go to maybe a basic website, or you can observe, like about this water bottle here, about being clear, things that you can find a definitive answer for.
Yeah.
And those questions are the lowest level questions because they're not really
Questions.
Yeah, they don't really involve that much
Thinking.
creativity and critical thinking because they're questions that have a clear
They're not very
answer.
simple. Yeah, they're very simple questions.
Right. So through these, when I model these questions, because you guys are talking about restorative justice, I'm going to talk about another issue that's kind of general that I can use to create examples. So for all these things, I'm going to talk about global warming. Is going to be my example. So,
First question, do you believe in global warming?
I do.
Me too.
But, so what questions would be, what is global warming? What causes global warming? Why questions are what we're really going to focus on today. Why questions are questions that help dig deeper to sort of get a sense of the complexities of an issue and also figure out try to find the root of the problem. Like, what is the root of the problem? Because oftentimes we think we have an idea of what it is, but really there's so many layers to it that we don't quite really understand. We don't really understand. So those questions would be things like, why isn't everyone interested in addressing climate change? Why would climate change affect some areas more than other areas? Why do fossil fuels contribute to climate change?
Because it's just we're burning shit or stuff that's just destroying the ozone.
Right. So you make a good point, Caden. You know some of the answers to some of these questions. As we answer or ask why questions, there might be some that you already know. You already know the answers to or have a general sense of. But we'll talk about digging deeper after that. I'm just going to briefly go over the two other types of categories of questions here, because those, what if questions and how questions, kind of relate more to the ideation and the prototyping stage of problem solving. And we're going to be writing letters, so we're adapting this model slightly, because we're not necessarily prototyping, we're more like drafting. And testing, we're more like sending the letter to involved parties, people higher up at YP. So, what if questions, after you've done the why, and I might note, it's very important to do this in this order. These questions are done in this order because they kind of build on each other. What if questions are where you go, you get to be really imaginative and think about like possible creative solutions to problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's some examples of what if questions that I came up with. What if we found a way to reduce the number of people driving in Portland each day by 15%? What if we changed the name of climate change to something much more or less scary? And this actually happened. I don't know if you've, I recently saw the movie.
They changed it to global warming.
It used to be called global warming.
And now they're calling it climate change.
Right, and that's something that apparently, I just saw the movie Veep, or Vice, with, which was about Dick Cheney, who was the vice president of George Bush, the last George Bush, and he's they were really worried about climate change. You hear about him and talking about being worried about climate change messing with what they wanted to do. They thought it was a problem that they didn't want to address, and people really freaked out about it. So it was called global warming at that point. So they did a thing where they tested out to a bunch of, they brought in like basically almost like people to be experimented on. Sort of, not really. It's called like a marketing thing where they bring in people to participate in polls and market research.
And isn't it like kind of like the placebo effect? Sort of like that, where like they give you tests and like take a medicine, and how does it affect you? And if you don't take the medicine, like
well, yes,
but it's like with opinions or with
exactly.
Words.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, I've done those before.
What they basically did.
In them, well, I actually participated, but it was in a science class. But they would give us like one actual like soda drink, and then one that looked like soda drink but wasn't, so you didn't know which one was.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Going back. Can we go back? So, I don't want to get off topic too much, but just the little story is they had this big pool of people come into a room, and they basically did a survey, and they said, okay, so here's this thing that's happening. Like, here's 3 different things we could call this thing that's happening. Which one do you think is the least scary to you? And so they chose, like through that, they found out that people found the term climate change to be the least threatening sounding. So the Bush administration they made a move to adopt that as the official term.
No, I would have just stuck with global warming because it should scare them that you're literally heating up your planet and we're going to be roasted.
But that's what they wanted. That's what they wanted to do.
Us.
Is they wanted people to be less scared because they wanted to not worry about it as much.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a roast off.
They were doing this kind of stuff.
Wow.
They were saying, I wonder what would happen if we changed the name to something less scary. And they ended up doing it. Anyway, okay, one more thing is, what if there were initiatives for taking action against climate change? Like, there kind of are already, but, what if we had this particular incentive, rather, not initiative, this incentive to make people want to do things that are better for the environment? We kind of have that now. If you have an electric car, you get, like, tax breaks and stuff.
You do?
You do, yes.
Oh, nice.
It's an
But
incentive. that-
electric cars are very expensive.
They are. So that's another thing. How
And
do we make them more
also,
affordable?
I don't think you're gonna get people to stop driving because, like, if they still have a gas car, because I know once I get a car, I'm probably not gonna be able to afford an electric car, and I'm probably need to get to go to farther places than a bike would help me to get,
Yeah.
or something like that. So I'll probably still be driving stuff. So it might be a good
Problems
idea
still-
eventually when a bunch of people have electric cars. I don't know, but I don't think you're gonna get people to stop driving.
Well, these are reasons why this kind of learning to be able to think critically
Unless
like
you
this.
try to arrest someone that has a gas car, but I think they'd go maybe against our rights and
That
just
would.
and it'd be there. And if you can like take away their gas car all you want, as long as you give them an electric car and enough money to pay for all that electric stuff.
Yeah.
Once you do that, then I think they'll be fine with it.
How do you spell physical?
Physical is
P is.
no, I know YSICAL. Physical.
Nice. That's right.
Wait,
Like-
PHYS what?
PHYS.
ICAL.
Okay. I really want to make sure we get to the activity, so I'm going to just speed through this last thing. The how questions are very important because after you think of what ifs, you think, okay, how do we make that happen?
Yep.
These are questions that can, we come up with practical solutions to our creative ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So, how would the number of daily drivers in Portland change if we added another TriMet line to the light rail system or extended bike lanes to outer Portland? How could the city generate the money to build this new light rail system or bike lanes? How could social media hashtags be used to influence how we refer to climate change? So these are like things of going from like what's the issue to how can these solutions be implemented, these ideas be implemented
could do
to
like-
potentially cause.
So we could do hashtag the end is near. If you guys don't start driving electric cars, the end is near.
Yeah. I mean, that could be an effective.
Instead of like you see those people on like the sidewalk wherever like they scream the end is near, hashtag on social media. Then a bunch of people.
Right, they're usually referring to another.
I know the rapture's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming for you.
Okay, so transitioning here again to moving towards this game is here. I want you to look at this sheet quickly. So, based on your survey, I recognized this. I put all the information together, kind of synthesized it to come up with what I think is the problem that you guys are seeing collectively here. The problem being, Youth Progress believes in restorative practice and tries to utilize this approach in its program. Clients believe the method works well with individual treatment plans. However, some clients are frustrated because they feel like other clients are disruptive and aggressive with the program without any consequences. Within the program without any consequences. They feel like staff listens to and validates their concerns, but does not appear to do anything to address the issue. So, I took that and I created an essential question, which an essential question is a question that we
Very important.
create to help us to navigate and explore that problem. So my question is, how can restorative practice be used more effectively at YP to address disruptive and aggressive behaviors and create a safer, more positive environment? So,
I know.
well, before we know, I mean, there are ways. You probably have a good point.
Yep.
But let's first try something else or move towards this game because we only have about 10 minutes of class left. So I really want to make sure we get to this. So what I need you to do is open that other sheet, the Y game
Okay.
You mean document?
document. And this one is a document that you both have are on. It's shared with both of you, the same document. So you'll notice that, Christian, yours is on the top, and then a little bit down, you'll find your section, Kaden.
Okay.
So here's what you're going to do. You're going to think about this problem and this essential question and everything that you know about restorative practice. So there's three things.
We just did that.
Hold on. And I want you to come up with 2 or 3 why questions surrounding the issue, the problem, the question, and your knowledge.
I
So-
made a little bit of a.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I made a little bit of an edit to what you had on there, though. I
Okay.
don't like my last initial being used.
No problem.
That was there was 2 Cadens in my class in kindergarten, and my last initial was used. It was Caden P, and of course, being in 1st grade, everyone just think it's just hilarious.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Jeez, dude, what are you doing?
We have 10 minutes of class left. Do you think you can handle it? I need.
Let him wet
Okay.
himself.
All right, so we can. Let me just explain this,
Okay.
and then move forward. So I want you to think critically and try to come up with 2 questions that are similar to the question models I have for global warming. So the global warming questions I have: why isn't everyone interested in climate change? Why would climate change affect some areas more than others? Why do fossil fuels contribute to climate change? I want you to come up with 2 to 3 why
Does it have to
questions.
be fossil fuel related?
This should not be. It's about restorative justice and the problem at YP that you're having.
Oh, I was gonna put why is anime considered a cartoon?
So the problem that we recognized here,
Mm-hmm.
and the central question about restorative justice.
Mhm.
How I want you to come up with why questions related to those things. Things you're curious about, things you don't know.
Yep.
I will let you into the
Are
bathroom
you
now.
flossing?
Sure, why not? I gotta go.
I appreciate your water consumption. How you doing? Did you got a couple or?
I got one. My first one is, why do staff not use restorative justice when clients threaten other clients?
Okay.
I want to put one about like punishment, like, cause like that's just my major. This was just my major question about restorative justice, because it doesn't make sense to use restorative justice even like when a client's being physically aggressive, when you still even haven't given them punishment. Because at that point, you should still give them a punishment, even when you start threatening them.
Can you turn that into a question? That totally works. What do you think?
Why is there no restorative justice being used? Well, because that already fits in with with clients threatening other clients.
Why? How about why is restorative justice, or why are more like traditional punishments not used?
Yeah, I guess so.
Does that work for you? To the program. Okay, you got your questions. All the questions sound good. So, here is the nature of the why game. You're gonna play it together. I'm gonna kind of moderate. Okay? So, each person, or one person, reads the question of that the other person wrote, right? So, Caden, you would read one of Christian's questions. Christian, you would respond with a potential answer, meaning you don't have to know the answer, but something that is your best guess.
How long
as to
can the
what
answer be?
It could just be, it's a verbal answer. You're not going to write it. You're just going to respond because this, right?
I have long verbal answers.
I'll write down that answer. Then, Caden, you will ask, why again? To which case, you will answer another question, or you'll answer deeper. You'll go deeper with your answer, and I'll model this in a second. The point of the game is you're going to see how many whys you can answer before you have to say, I really have no idea. So, the person who answers the more whys wins.
What do we win?
You're going
I
down.
haven't determined that yet. Maybe
You're
a
going
small
down.
gift card, maybe just
You're going down.
esteem and prestige.
No, that's not a good. That's not
Alright.
good.
I'll think we can talk about that. Probably a small gift card if that's the currency that we're dealing with here.
Alright, how about we do $1,000 on Amazon gift card?
That's
Okay.
not small.
I'm not going to address that. We're going to move forward because we don't have much time. So, here's
Ignoring
how this
that
works.
statement.
Here's how this works. I wrote this down for the climate change thing of how this could happen. So, my question, why isn't everyone addressing climate change? My answer was, well, because some people don't believe in it or are denying it. Why? Okay, good. Glad you asked. Because they have something to lose if more action was taken, or they have a negative opinion about certain news sources that give them information? Well, because some companies make a lot of money on fossil fuels and oil, and they can, like oil, and they can have, those companies have a lot of influence on policy, in the government policy.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because, well, they are probably, one, they make a lot of money on fossil fuels because people buy, they rely on people to buy cars and other products that use oil, and that they probably pay people money to convince and influence politicians to have a certain stance on an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the last question, here's something that I said why one more time. However, you have it, I can slightly amend the question to build on it. So I said, last one, why does this happen? Instead of just why. Because the government has certain laws that allow organizations and companies to donate a lot of money
those questions
to politicians. And then I said, why? And I said, I don't know. So that was as far as I got. That's where my research starts, because that's the point that I am kind of out of my comfort zone and where I have at least a little bit of understanding. Doesn't mean I understand all that other stuff perfectly, but I recognize this is the moment where I'm like, oh, I'm over my head. I really don't know. So that's what we're trying to get to. But we want it to be as deep as possible. And to answer your question, Caden, you have to answer to you have to kind of provide an educated guess. You're thinking critically.
Doesn't it have to be YP related?
Well, it has to be related to the question. So,
What question?
well, what's
no,
one?
like, does the questions have to be YP related?
The questions do have to be YP related, or they have to be related to restorative justice in general. They're related to this topic. Bless you. Is that what you have?
What?
Do you have questions related to?
Yeah, I
Okay.
have those 3 questions, but I'm meaning like the questions you want us to do now.
So let's model this. Who wants to go first? Who wants to be the first person to go?
I will go first.
Okay.
Wait, so you all are gonna ask me questions?
We are going to. I'm going to ask the questions, or Kaden can ask the questions, and I will document the answers.
What questions?
So, if you look at the sheet, the Y game sheet at the top, Christian has his 2 questions. Why do staff not use
so I read
restorative
those to
justice?
him?
You read that one, just the one, or whatever one you prefer. Which one do you prefer?
Why are there no fair punishments being given to aggressive clients?
Okay, so that means you have to answer that
Okay.
your best possible guess, and I'm going to be the one that kind of judges it as being silly, in which case you are kind of disqualified. So you're
and
answering
I
that.
win.
That would just be it. Like, we can try this a couple times.
Alright.
But to start
so,
with,
why are there no punishments being given to aggressive clients? Because, well, first of all, in the moment, clients are very angry, and when they're angry, if you say, "Hey, you're on hold," it doesn't make them more angry, and they will cuss you out.
okay, because clients are very angry, and it can make them more angry if you put them on hold.
Yep.
Okay, so we might say as a chorus, Kaden and I, why? So
Why?
you can answer why to any part of that question.
Okay.
Rather than answer. Why are they angry, or why is putting them on hold make them angry?
Well, first of all, because they make them angry, trying to use restorative or fair punishments with them, it just because they're already in a heightened state of anger, it just makes them feel like they're being more attacked because they already might be in an argument with another client and might make them more angry. That they feel like someone's coming at them again.
Okay.
You spelled state wrong.
Yeah, thank you. So why? Why are they in a
Why are they in a heightened state of anger?
Because they probably got in an argument with another client, and the client probably started calling them names, and then they were calling them names back, and they decided to start making threats toward the client.
okay? Because they got in an argument with another client and started making. Okay.
Why did they get into this argument with another client?
Because they probably wanted they probably wanted something, either something to eat or to play a game, and the other client either said, nope, I'm taking the food, or I'm going to play the game, and they didn't like that, and so they probably started saying, like, what the hell, I want some, and didn't like, and they just kind of got in an argument because they wanted some, but the other person didn't want to give up the food.
Okay.
Why did that person get in the way?
Because some clients can be very selfish, and they don't care, and they probably very selfish that day. Probably wasn't in a very good mood.
Why were they in a selfish mood that day?
Probably because they had something taken from them. They could have been put on hold, and so they're like, "Hey, I already got my privileges taken away. I'm probably gonna project that onto someone else."
Well, why would they project that onto somebody else if it's just going to make their situation worse?
Because they can't project on stuff. They can't take the staff stuff. They'll get in trouble. And instead, they're gonna put it on someone else where they can. Like if it's like a bigger client, they're gonna project it on a smaller client because the smaller client cannot deal with that.
Oh, great.
Why project it on a staff when it's not the staff fault, but it's their own though? Like why project it on anybody besides themselves if it's their own fault?
Because some clients are kind of in a delinquent state and don't think, hey, I don't want to hurt myself. I'm gonna make other people pay. I'm gonna show them my emotions in an appropriate way because they don't know how to express themselves. So they decide to have other people show them how they feel in not so appropriate way.
Okay, awesome, great job, really like that. A lot of good stuff there. One thing that did is, one, Kaden, those are really good questions. Two, Christian, I like that you answered each question with a lot of detail, and if you notice, that was a bit of a living thing. It started in one place, it went somewhere else, and we got somewhere really important because Christian, you said something about clients can be selfish, and then you asked what made them selfish that day, and then you said they had something taken away from them, and they projected on somebody else, which
they could have also
that's an important thing, and that's a bit of developing empathy for anyone. The idea that when someone's acting selfish, that person might not be a selfish person. They might have had something happen to them that they're reacting to.
Yep.
Okay, great. I have all that written down. Now, do you think it's possible we have just like a couple minutes? Not even really. Can we do one more? Can we do with flip? Can we flip it quickly?
If you
Let's skip question number 2 though. That's the one I'd say is off limits.
Oh, alright. Why are there so few staff?
Because Mike's bosses pulled funding back because they don't have it, so they had to let staff go.
Why did they pull the funding?
Running out of money, you need to be able to pay for what is necessary, and having so many staff is not as necessary as being able to feed the youth and give them a place to live.
Why is it more necessary to have a place of shelter and food than to be able to give staff a job or people a job?
Because if you don't give the youth any shelter or food, then you're not doing the job that you said you were going to, and at that point you're starving a kid, which is child abuse.
Why?
I don't want to interrupt too much, but I do know yesterday we talked about Maslow's like a hierarchy of needs, and shelter and food are the lowest, most basic.
Why is it against the law, or why is it against law to starve a child?
Well, let's think about the question as like the money based.
Money. Okay, why is it? Well, why can't we get more money?
There we go.
Because it's a non-profit organization. We get money from the state, and the state decides how much money we get.
This is actually a non-profit.
Yes.
Oh.
You don't. The program doesn't get paid by the guardians of the kids that are here. They're actually just getting paid by the state.
Oh. Okay.
It's all run through DHS. So if the state decides to pull funding, then well, we're screwed.
And then
Can I ask a question?
What? Oh yeah, go ahead.
How does being a nonprofit help the school, or why is it important that it's a nonprofit as opposed to a for-profit school, like an organization based on how it works? Is that too complicated of a question?
For what?
Kaden?
What?
Why is based on what type of program it is? Why is it good that it's not a for-profit?
For-profits can, if there's not very many youth in here, then your funding drops drastically because you're not, or depending on like if you have to give shelter to a kid, it also depends on what their guardian can actually pay you.
So, drop based on how many. Do you have any more type of questions, Christian? I think we're like way over time,
Yeah.
But there was a good point that we got to there that I liked a lot.
I'm surprised you didn't know this was non-profit though.
Yeah,
So that's a concern and an issue about like why, you know.
But non-profits can also cause a problem because the state can easily decide to drop your funding.
Okay, so can have their funding. Interesting. All very interesting. All very relevant.
Okay, well he obviously wins because he got more time.
Yay.
Oh right. The whole. You guys both did a great job. I'll probably just you both win. You're both gonna get something.
Yeah.
Yay!
I'll take $10 toward the hug, or 50. We'll do
Okay.
50.
We'll do $10. I think that's a little more fair.
I wanted to have you reflect on this in writing, but we really don't have time. So,
No, I'm already late for my class.
one last question, as just a kind of an exit question, is like, so how is this sort of game and this method help you think about a problem more in depth?
Because it asks more questions than just like one question's like, why is that water bottle clear? Because they chose to make it clear. Right? That's a simple question.
So what type of questions were asked?
And then the question that y'all asked me was geez, let me go back up. Why are there no fair punishments being given to aggressive clients? And because that's a more reasonable question. It makes sense because right now there's not very reasonable. Like just a little bit ago, another client started calling another client a N-word.
Hold on one sec, just because one, I don't want to get into specifics about that right this minute, and we're really over time. But only question I had for you was, how did all of the why questions help you think about the top? Like, how did it make you think? Affect the way you thought about the question that you asked?
It made me think deeper about what is going on with clients and why they might have given punishments right at the moment. But I still believe that eventually, maybe a couple of those after, they can pull the client into the office and say, hey, you're getting these consequences. Because it's not okay for a client to be physically aggressive to another client and then start making threats to them afterwards, saying you're a punk or whatever.
I agree it's not okay. But you developed a better sense of the complexity of the issue.
Yep.
Kaden, what was challenging about this for you?
Nothing.
6
years in programs like this, you kind of learn just everything like that.
Okay, cool. So you feel like this is something that you do frequently?
Yeah, I know all the issues with non-profits, profit-based organizations. It's just simple.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you feel like you kind of have a good general understanding. Great, then we can take that to the next level when we get to the next stage of things, which we will do starting tomorrow, and then Thursday we won't really have any class formally because.
So I won't have to come in here then?
You will, but we won't. We'll probably do something that's
I won't be here.
Slightly different because so Christian doesn't get behind. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for your time and effort.
Can you send Kyle an email?
I can just tell him. I'll just walk over and tell him.
Because.
And Christian, where are you supposed to go? Because I can tell him.
Natasha. I'll just literally walk over and say, hey, I was late.